People keep money in current account themselves. And you know why? We have a society that is almost more like aspirational, but at the same time egoistic. That means you show how much I count. You know, the level of foolishness has been elevated to that which you consider it a pride, that I have 2 million in my account. Who is a reasonable person who keeps 2 million in the account in an inflationary economy? You know, some of you are here. I'm sorry I used the word foolish. I will call you not yet informed. But you show it amongst yourselves to say, this is how much. Suleiman is smiling to the bank with that kind of thing. Go and pay attention. Money in your current accounts than you keep anywhere. And you know why you do so? It is not that you are foolish. Their decision has been taken away from you. The options you have to invest money has shown that they have robbed you over the years. And trust has been broken. So sometimes you leave that money there waiting for when you want to take decision. All that has changed is that the time between when you make decision, which should be about 3 days, has now become 3 months. Or 3 years. God bless you, sir. No. You are not actually, no. What you said is not actually wrong. Data supports you. Suleiman, as much as he speaks the English to you, he's the beneficiary. No. You see, so there is no incentive to increase it or to match inflation. Because the definition of inflation, for those who are economists here, I am not. But I employ a number of them that they have trained me enough to understand what these things are all about. And I listen to people like Suleiman again. What they tell me is that there is no way you do that when the effective naira for a bank. Suleiman, your effective naira is that for every 1 naira you earn in the bank, you only have about, say, maybe 55 naira to give out, right? I don't know what you...
Actually, that's an important conversation. You actually don't have 55 naira.
How much
for
you have?
every 100 naira in deposit you get, you only have, at this point, you got 25 naira left to give out for every 100 naira. Because the first 30% of it, you cannot give out. You have to put it in liquid asset as required by regulation. The next 45%, you have to give in CRR. So what you actually have effectively to lend is 25 naira.
Okay, so
but you paid interest rate on the whole 100 naira, by the way.
Okay, so whoever is doing the media thing for Bisi Oni, be careful how you pass information. I want to talk freely. I don't talk in a group larger than 10. But I want to talk freely so that any of you here will remember Bisi Oni's birthday. Because what you are getting here will see. I said 25. I sat down with another bank MD, a colleague of his, and when I found out what the effective naira to them, after all the things, I'm like, how do you run? If any of you, you know the data he gave to me, go and look at that data and look at the sources of income in banks in the last 8 years. And you see the dynamic changes from interest income, not fee income, but to other income. What you call other income is FX. No, you see, all of you now are suddenly energized and you are not hungry again. But you see, no, let's be honest here. We're having a very honest conversation. The truth of the matter is that, yeah. Okay, you see, what you are paying attention to, if I run a bank, I can't even meet my own normal. Like, gentlemen, move. You are disturbing me. All this paparazzi thing is this society, understand? This is not about sound bites or, you don't understand. It's our reality. What I want to come out here is to answer that question when he spoke about mortgage. Has any of you who owns a house taken a mortgage before? Anybody in this room? Has any of you taken a mortgage to buy your house? You see, none. None. You are a good person. And it doesn't mean those of us, because I didn't take a mortgage as well. What I'm trying to say to you is that, have you ever understood the concept that when you see your colleagues overseas, when they pay mortgage and say, no, it's good, it's all the same, but you have survived, you own a house and whatever, you never compare that part of it. Because you see, for those who live in Canada, for example, Canada has the highest debt to income ratio in the G7 countries. The of that is that you have the highest divorce rate, the highest homelessness rate, the highest whatever, because that society does not even have a communal relationship. If any of you in this room goes broke, you know how to call Bisi, you know how to call him, you know how to call Femi or Suleiman. We'll find one way. We can abuse you along the line, but we'll find a way. We'll sort it out. What am I telling you is that pointing fingers about Nigeria is sometimes us leaving the point. Because, you know, sometimes all of us have gone into a dopamine that we like negativity about Nigeria. What I'm talking to you is not about the negativity. I'm talking to you about the reality of the economics of the Nigerian system. And what it is that when he said something about the banks are bad or whatever, most of us, along this old generation, we grew up in a system whereby the bank were considered a quasi-public institution. This is a for-profit institution. They have no obligation to give a, let me use the French word, F-U-C-K, about all of you in here. In case you miss the point, I'm not his friend. He's a provider of capital. I need capital. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work, but he has obligation to stakeholders, to governors. And so, you see, when we throw data, therefore, let us put it within context. He has to deliver returns. Let me tell any of you, does anybody know the amount of capital that Sterling Bank has to raise to meet the CBN requirements? Does anybody in this place know? No, because some of you are going to have to pay for it if you are his customer. So you should know. Here's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to make it so less technical in such a way that we clear is that of all the sectors in Nigeria's economy, the only one who has the highest investment in strategic thinking, in technological innovation, in adaptation. Once we get that over, people like me, Bisi, will be retired. We are not involved in this conversation. The younger ones who are in this room, that is your next best thing. If you can get your insurance, tied to your pensions, and moderating with your banking sector, we can have a better thing. So, Mr. Moderator, the question is not a question about mortgage. What was it? Sonia Ayere was part of the mortgage. Yeah. You know why it never worked? Because there was no foundation for it to thrive. And I can see that I've agitated the speaker enough to grab the mic to want to talk. So let me yield the floor.
Thank you. I can't just be taking the beating just like that. No,
okay, I'll give you 2 minutes because we are going to round up in another 10 minutes this discussion.
No. You must give me more than 2 minutes. Otherwise, you would have done an injustice by saying that when it comes to mortgage, until you can establish a nexus between your rental income and the mortgage payment, you are never going to have a viable, vibrant mortgage system. In other words, what you pay in rent has to be so close to what you pay as. But you cannot have that in a 20% inflation environment. When people say banking credit is high, what you are saying to me is that if I do nothing, I buy government treasury bills or I buy corn, I will get inflation of 20%, but I should give you the money at 25. It's never going to happen. I want to speak as someone who genuinely wants banking to work, not that I want to profit from it. I want it to work. think about all the assets, because whenever there is money, the other side of it is an asset. This is one of the places where your asset is least secured. You know that. If it is your mobile asset, we're a low-trust economy. If it's your fixed asset, the government's intervention in your right to the asset, we just had a big drama now about some properties being demolished. There are some where people revoke your license and backdate it 25 years. Now, when you move away from your asset, the security of your asset, which of the industry has such a high level of productivity that you want to put your money in today? Because it's your productivity that you profit from, right? The productivity of the industry. Is it that we're so good at building houses that you want to put your money there? Or do we rely on either companies from Dubai to come and build the high-rise and workers from Benin to build the low-rise? So you want to put money there. You move from there, go to your energy sector. One of the biggest mistakes Nigerian banks made in the last 15 years is to put money in the energy sector. Because we believed in a reform that never happened. We want to move away from the energy sector. Let's move into road infrastructure. People do not understand that in the last 8 years, Nigerian banks have been primarily responsible for funding all the federal government road infrastructure through the Sukuk, including the rail lines. I don't think we think about that. Let's move away from the road structure and just pick where are we in terms of productivity doing well, because it is your profit or the ability to repay a bank comes from a sector where you do well. If you don't do well, that money doesn't come back. You all know that banks are walking around looking for about, 3 trillion, right? You're all aware. How many of you have set aside money to put in that investment? Anyone here who has set aside a reasonable amount of their savings to invest in the bank? I don't see any hand. Why? Why? Now, can you see the conflict between, in one breath, insisting that banks are doing very well, and another breath saying, no, I'm not going to touch it. Oh, that food is so good, but I'm not going to try it. There's a problem, and we need to solve that problem in our head. Otherwise, we don't figure out how the bank will play a role. I can tell you for free that bank investors, if they have their way, many of them will divest. Do you know why? Because this is one of the most regulated sectors in the world. And the more difficulties the economy faces, the more the regulations of bank goes up. So your ability to actually make real return is limited. But I won't be doing us justice if I don't go back, share some experience as to why it's incredibly difficult for people to access capital. There are 2 ways, maybe 3 ways that I can think of where you would gain capital. One is that you run a viable business. And so you're coming to us to say, give me more money so that I can run a bigger business. In other words, you already have a business that can be evaluated and say, oh, it's viable, it's profitable, your unit economics work. Those people in Nigeria today, they get money. I guarantee you that if you're already running a business today that is viable, you get money. The second one is you have assets that can form the basis to say, okay, you brought in something to the table, and that is your equity contribution. It could be sometimes it's even you as they are the assets that we have not pulled into the financial system. That's your number one. And it's so significant we can't ignore it. Number two is that even when those assets come into the financial system, if you don't develop the human resources, I'm not going to put banking capital. I want those assets to come in as equity. I want the human resources to back it. The people going on Japan and going to Canada are not the one that you have to figure out how to retain the workforce. And then number three, once you've done that, you have to build a trust environment. A trust environment can be enabled by culture, but it can also be enforced by law. Trust starts to rebuild when the law is enforced. Where we are today, I have instances of mortgages that are 15 years in the court. 15 years, I cannot foreclose. You cannot have that environment. You should be able to foreclose a mortgage within months. If the legal system does not allow mortgage foreclosure, it's no longer a mortgage, it's personal loan. Right. So to come back to my brother, one of my favorite lecturer, he taught sociology when I was in university. He says, when you score 80%, you go home and you say, I scored 80. I scored 90. 40%, you go home and say, the lecturer gave me 40. So he has never been an expert witness in a customer that say, I want to sue my bank for doing so well. So if 90% of the customers had a good experience, he doesn't see those ones. All he sees are the ones that fail. And so I'm saying you are right. You meet your 1% that have been cheated by banks. You never meet the 99% for whom it has worked. If you go around and you have honest conversation, there are so many Nigerian businesses that owe their existence today to the work that has been done by banks. So my point is that I hear you guys, but if we're not careful, we don't fix our economy, you can bring a whole new set of banks, and we're going to start where we are. Thank you.
Thank you. As we round up this, we are going to round up this discussion. The last thing, Abubakar, before you run away, in the period of Soludo in 2003, 2004, the banks went on capital raise. We buffered the capital of the banks. What happened 2007, 2008, subprime came and bubble busted. All the money were frittered away, margin lending and all phony lendings. We're back here now. We are on another journey to recapitalization. How are we sure that the bubble fund created will not be frittered away again? Please.
Okay, first and foremost, we are not sure. And the reason being that I started earlier by talking about the four-wheel drive. You pump all your engine energy into one wheel, the car is not going anywhere. Capital is only one component. If we don't have the right environment, for the businesses we want to fund, I estimate that if we raise 3 to 4 trillion, we need to grow about 25 trillion naira worth of assets. To give a sense of how big that is, credit to the private sector today is less than 40 trillion, that's 25 trillion. If you throw 25 trillion into this market, as we are today, on the same infrastructure, the same workforce, the same consumer demand, you're going to create a crisis. So first and foremost, I think and I believe that the government understands that if they don't fix the efficiency of the use of capital, and that efficiency is currently being hindered by infrastructure, but by regulators. If we do not make it easier for companies to hire, then if you throw in more capital, what you end up with is the crisis you've spoken about, right? So I don't think the absorptive capacity exists, which is probably why the central bank has given us 2 years in the hope that we start to raise the capital today while changes happen in the productive sector. So imagine what was happening at the port, in Apapa Port, where it cost more to move goods out of Apapa Port to Ibadan than it did to bring it from China. Those are the kind of bottlenecks that must be fixed before we throw capital at the problem. And a port is just one of them. There is also a fundamental, and I think this will be my last point. Nigeria suffers from a lack of formalization of businesses. A lack of formalization of businesses. Formal business is how you achieve scale. Generally goes towards formalized business. So the government needs to ask itself, why are Nigerian businesses afraid of becoming formalized and therefore being able to access banking credit? Or for that matter, capital from the capital market. That lack of formalization, I think, must happen before this capital raising can make sense.
Thank you. I will give my discussion 1 minute here, and then I will deploy to default to the audience. Please, 1 minute, Tunde Adaramaja. Random.
Yeah. On this occasion of BC 60th, the take-home for me, in all this conversation, is that we need to trust ourselves more. We need to also imbibe the positive mind to change, our economy for the better. Believing in ourselves, just like he has said. Then again, the regulators are, whether they know what they are doing or not, again, I'm challenging the banks that they need to invest more in our.
My starting point was the trust had always been an issue. The populace don't trust the banks don't trust the regulators, and so there's a need for us to harness all of this and have a more cohesive of running business. Sometimes when you look at it, it's better for me to run Shehu and Sons than to have an FIRS come after me tomorrow and say, oh, I'm slamming you with a base. Your turnover should be the basis for computing your tax. Educate from both sides, from the populace, from the regulator, because if you have clear understanding about our needs for each other, then maybe we're able to help each other and assist each other more. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Alua, for the last one from you.
So the theme of the conversation was transcending the summary of it, therefore, will be about 5 or 6 points. Let me mention the ones I can recall. One, this is the most overregulated environment I've ever seen in my life. There's two from the Nigerian, from the recapitalization exercise. I will remind everybody to remember 1948 Colombia, whereby when they needed to bring in drug money, what you needed to do was to do a recapitalization of the banking sector. But that's not what is happening here, but it is hacking, because 300 billion. I need that 3 billion to be broken down into FX, majorly the dichotomy between not between monetary and fiscal, but understanding the parameters of fiscal. Every time we talk about fiscal in Nigeria, we engage in an activity that suggests that it's about Ministry of Finance. Fiscal is essentially about your trade. It's about trade. And in everything we have done up to now, there has never been emphasis on trade. For example, between economies that grow well and those who hold patents and intellectual property rights. We don't have it. So the whole idea for us is that if we're going to transcend financialism, we must understand the principle of trade. So whenever you talk about fiscal policy, any of you here, coach me. Trade in the one area. The second aspect, which may shock you, is foreign affairs. The third is your Ministry of Finance. That's the lowest level in the whole fiscal policy architecture. You may take your time to educate yourself on it, and if you're so fine, you can challenge me or pay me for it. By the way, Shegun, I'm seeing you sitting down there. Shegun, look up. You are hiding your face. I've just seen you. Nice of you to see you here. Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen and lady. I would point to the audience now. Mr. Tim Akon has been trying to have a comment, so I will pass the microphone to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to say happy birthday to Bisi Oni. I'm a customer to FundQuest, and we've had a very robust relationship in the last couple of years. Through them, because normal banks, their problem. When I started, I worked for 3 multinationals before I started a business about 20 years ago. The biggest multinational you can think of. I worked for Dunlop, I worked for Unilever, I worked for Coca-Cola. When I wanted to start a business, bank would say, go and bring history of your financial transactions. Where is history? I didn't get any history. But thank God for companies like FundQuest, who provided capital despite no history. But that's not what I wanted to say. I just want to say that FundQuest is a reputable organization. They have human face to their business. So once again, I cannot thank you enough, Bisi Oni and MD. Thank you, thank you, thank you. What I want to say now is this. Let's break everything we are talking. Let's break it down to the fundamentals. For who? Why do I say that? Abak, I must also commend you for your brilliant presentation. I think all bankers are orators. When they talk, they carry you away and then you forget what you want to say. But today, I will not forget what I want to say. In 30 years, 60% of their people out of poverty. In 30 years, 800 million people. In 30 years, Nigeria will drop 60% of our people to poverty. The same 30 years, because in 2019 we became the poverty capital of the world. But it's a paradox that last year, 2023, 6 banks made a profit, not before tax, profit after tax of 2.6 trillion naira in this same economy, where 776 companies, manufacturing companies, folded up. 776 folded up. 350 companies manufacturing, they were in distress. So banks must be miracle workers to have been the only sector that is thriving when all other people are dying. I appreciate the point you made, sir, about character, about that. But even in China, when they wanted to develop, it's still the banks. And they've made provision that a percentage of this money will naturally go bad. So we can't say because of some people, bad character, a customer to FundQuest for years, they know my house, he comes to my house.
If you do those 3 things, educate the people, generate electricity, and make sure that we're not having 5.3 children per woman, we will all get out of poverty. If you fail to do those 3 things, bring more banks, the poverty remains. Banks do not lift a country out of poverty. It is the type of economy you choose to run. Banks only enable that. Let me go back. Look at our educational system. We run an educational system that can only cater for 1% of the population in tertiary institution. Only 2.3 million people are in tertiary institution out of 215 million people. And when they come out of tertiary institution, we have to go and retrain them. And you think when those people go into productive sector, they will have high productivity. You now go into the energy sector. The energy we produce for the entire country on grid cannot carry Lagos State. And you want me to put my money behind that and you think it will come back. The point is we have to have an honest conversation that doesn't do with trying to find fault where there isn't. The foundation has to work. And the foundation is education, education, education. I have done a lot to fund education and to work with educational institutions. With Lucky Technology is going to enable us leapfrog. But if we don't solve for education, you can throw money around till kingdom come. It won't go very far. The other point is whether or not banks are doing well. In 2006, we sat down and told banks to put together the equivalent of $200 million, give or take. Today, if you have $200 million, how much is that? $240 billion. Why are banks still looking for capital when those that have been given $200 billion are still looking for capital? Since 2006 till now, we don't have $500 billion. We still have to go and find capital. Does that suggest that the banks are doing very well? That meant that if you had kept your your 25 billion naira, which is about $200 million, and just sat down and bought Eurobond and waited, you would meet the 500 and have change. I'm telling you guys this, don't be carried away by headline numbers. The banks are not doing as well as you think they are. It is because you forget there are banks with 700 billion in capital today. So when they say 200 billion, it's nothing. Somebody with treasury bills at 21% will do better than that. I'm not saying they don't make money. I'm saying we overestimate how well they are doing. If they were doing so well, they will not be raising capital after less than 20 years. Right? So, first is, I don't speak here as a banker. I'm speaking as a Nigerian who is worried that we continue to misunderstand the role of banks, and that is why, despite talking for the last 30 years, nothing has changed. The bank is not going to give you startup capital. We need to build startup capital. For you to build startup capital, you need two important things. One, you need capabilities, human resource needs to be in place. And secondly, you need to take the existing asset and make them viable or available for building businesses. All our existing assets have no value. There's nobody here who does not have family asset that is just in their head. Doesn't play any role in the economic growth. And finally, I say dead asset, dead capital come in two forms. Yes, the most obvious one is people have dumped stolen money in Ikoyi and Abuja, wherever. But the less obvious one is that our God-given asset is on the ground. Look at the sectors. Oil and gas is not doing well because somebody is stealing oil and gas. Is that bank? No. If you move away from oil and gas and you move to mining, Dubai buys $3.5 billion of Nigerian gold. Only $500 million is official. What's that got to do with banking? Agriculture is not doing well because people cannot go to their farm. What has that got to do with us? Somebody says 70% of fraud goes through bank. 100% of car accidents happen on the road. It means nothing. It means that 70% of fraud is money. Because money by their nature sits in bank. I'll give you a final comment. I'll give you an example. There's a contract awarded by the government. There are 15 layers of checks and balances. The Federal Executive Council approves the contract. The company works, very well-known company, publicly listed, walk into a bank. Give me an advance payment guarantee. You give it to the person. The money comes in. And the customer starts to spend money and buying steel. Should I follow you and say whether this account is steel and buying cement? No. The nature, once the foundation is rotten, there's nothing you can do at the last mile. And if we want to save our country, let's get back to the foundation. Thank you.
Thank you, Abubakar. On that note, we'll end the discussion point. I mentioned I want to Bisi Oni to come up stage and take a photograph with the discussants and speaker. Thank you. So the MC will take over from here.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, if you had a good time, please put your hands together for them one more time. Let them take their group picture. I feel very privileged. I feel very lucky to have been selected to anchor this event today because I got the chance of a lifetime. I got to watch Mr. Olufemi Awuyemi have a go at the CEO of Sterling Bank, and it was beautiful to watch. It was beautiful to watch the back and forth, and I also learned a lot. Ladies and gentlemen, one more time, we'll put our hands together for the panelists, please. Put your hands together for them, please. No matter how much we want to talk about the economy and banks and all of that, we can do that all day, but it is not advisable to do it on empty stomachs. So we've decided to move item number 7 upwards. It is time for the buffet, so we can go, table by table. Please don't forget, after the buffet, the session continues. We're going to have a question and answer session, and we're going to introduce the celebrant formally. I'm sure some of you have almost forgotten it's somebody's birthday. We're going to introduce him formally. So we're going to go table by table. It's a buffet. Let's get our lunch, and then the program continues afterward. Mr. DJ, please give us light music in the background. Give us light music at the background as we go for lunch. Thank you.